Next, I'm actually going to go back to a kind of Sean's mention about the idea of software as a user. Uh, as you're thinking about how your agent starts being used in a working environment and how that software has to be a user, how is that different from how software has traditionally been set up? I'm going to toss it back to you to start with, Sean, but feel free to chime in, everybody else.
Yeah, like so classically software has been installed and or accessed and a individual clicks around and does their thing, right? I think that there are a lot of now if you will agentic solutions that are still providing some UI where maybe instead of two clicks it's one click because the agent did something, or one click and the agent will run away and do something and come back. Um, that is one approach, or for what it's worth, there's an approach where the software exists in the environment like a coworker.
Mm-hmm.
And in existing in the environment like a coworker, I don't click on my coworker. Like my coworker engages with me
Hopefully you
in the
don't.
places. Yeah, exactly. They don't engage with me. They engage with me in the places and spaces where we work, right? And so we have a thesis that that is how, true agentic solutions should be delivered. And that's through a mechanism that feels, for what it's worth, in the world we live in, that the agent is a remote colleague who, I always like to joke and say they're somewhere in Boulder, but, they're sitting on silicon, right? And so it's just a different mindset about user experience. The UX of it is not centered around the path you take through clicking, but it's the tone of the response. It's the how quickly or how slowly it gets back to you in certain situations. It's maybe the channel it chooses to communicate to you on. It's maybe a decision not to respond. Like there's just um, a different way to think about it if you're truly trying to achieve something that is going to sit aside people in an environment or a situation. I where we're building such that it feels like another colleague, another user,
Mm-hmm.
truly.
It's a good point.
Yeah, and I'd
It's
like to make a
interesting you
comment
brought
here. I
that
mean,
up
it's one of
really
those things
quickly.
that, sorry, Dr. T, but
No, go
it's one of
ahead.
those things where you can position and do the analogy that's like one of your workers or coworkers. I mean, ultimately, in a way, it can behave that way because basically it'll go off and do whatever it wants. So it's like, how do you then control that agent, agentic agent, and where it's going, what it's doing? Because a lot of it is like goal oriented and wants to do what it wants after it learns. So, I mean, that's the challenge that we're facing right now is how do you get these self-directed type of decision-making agents to behave the way they should? And so that's, I think, a challenge that like the second phase as we roll out agentic agents across the board in a business. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I
Doc.
was going to say my comment was going to be on just the observability layer becoming more and more important. I think, Darren, you mentioned that when this sort of system is coming up. There was a panel earlier with Brett where we talked about agent to agent selling in B2B, like how that changes as well.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so I think it's an interesting move. I wonder if they're an individual like employee is sort of a cluster of agents and not necessarily even a singular agent. And then the person who manages them, how matrix does that become? Where does that sit? I
Mhm.
think it'll be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I mean,
frameworks
I think
framework matters. When you're doing this, like the framework that is the underlying mechanism for helping with keeping appropriate guardrails that has to deal with the orchestration. Because you're right,
Mhm.
Tuba, that um, when it's all said and done, some of these agents, I know, especially mine, shouldn't be called an agent in a singular way. Like it is
Right.
an agency of right now we are in probably close to 500 agents, if you will, that are running
Yeah.
within this platform. So the framework allows for orchestration in a broad way, and the framework helps to control for the planning and the execution at
Yeah, and to your point, Sean, I think it's a situation where you're going to have agents that control other agents, right?
Yeah,
oh,
It's
for
how
sure.
you use those models and development, put them together. And I think that's going to be the best route to go forward with versus saying it, an end user like us monitoring it. It's hard to keep track of all the different agents out there ourselves, right? So there's going to have to be automated agents that have that guide rail type role.
Yeah, but I think that the question is more about think about the tooling and overall how SaaS and software were optimized in the last I would say 30 or 40 years now. Like as Sean said, it's not about clicks anymore. So if you think about Google, it's not about going into Google and kind of look for a query and see what the response is. It's actually by
Right.
asking what you want to know, and there's agents that run around, pull all the information, and provide you with summarization, a good summarization of what you need to know. And I think that's kind of where I say when you say first, I love software as a user. I think that that's a really good way to capture it. And I definitely agree that many of the tools that currently are serving humans, and if we're talking about go-to-market tools, think about those prospecting tools, which are designed for humans, which are no longer needed from that, not the human needed,
Right.
the
Right.
process itself, the tool will not be needed to be, click, click, click. You just write down what you want, and an agent or agencies, as you said, will pull the data that you need or do whatever workflow you want to run.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Excellent. On that note, thinking about how you're designing these agents, we're going to start high level and start getting deeper throughout the hour, but still staying a little high level for right now. As you're thinking about how to deploy these agents and as Sean said, create an agency of agents. I love that, by the way. What are you thinking about from an kind of an ethical perspective and in terms of the governance issues of bringing agents into an enterprise? And Darren, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, and specifically as we talk about go-to-market AI agents, it's going to be really important to think through different elements of transparency. And one thing I think about actually a lot is to what extent are agents required to self-identify themselves as an AI agent. If we're talking about outbound prospecting, there's certainly increasing rules and regulations. FCC is working on that as we speak to bring clarity and here in the US about whether an AI agent needs to self-identify as an agent and whether I have to opt out or opt in, what that process looks like. But I also think about it in a really interesting way inside of a real organization. I can imagine in an easy thought experiment 2 years from now, joining a new company, having a few Zoom calls with 3 or 4 colleagues, some people on the phone today, and then learning a month later that one of them is actually an AI persona. That would be easy to imagine, and I'm
It's
not sure
happened.
how I feel about it when I ask it how its kids are doing and how the weekend was. It'll be interesting reflection on that.
It's happening.